Hey everyone, welcome to episode 17 with Jerry Thompson. You own it. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think the last two podcasts, or at least two out of the last three, I talked a little bit about the selling process. If you're a homeowner, getting your house prepared to sell, how to make life easy to get the most money in the sale, and how to find success in selling your house fundamentally. And I kind of outlined all the steps in the process and some of the things that sellers can do to prepare themselves to be better sellers, including the mindset that it would take in order to sell your house for the most money in the quickest possible time. So today I thought I would go back to kind of an oldie but a goodie. I think we started way back at the beginning of this podcast, maybe one of the first three episodes. I talked a little bit about how you can succeed in today's market in buying a home. And the important thing to remember is when you're a seller and when you are a buyer, fundamentally in today's marketplace, you are also part of that sales process. So one of the things that people often lose sight of when they're thinking about buying or thinking about selling, they look at the me side of the transaction. Buyers try to drive a hard bargain. Sellers complain a lot about the inconvenience of showing their house and having to clean and make the beds. And it's, three people might want to look at my house on a Saturday, which means I need to leave. And buyers on the flip side might complain about, they want 18 different inspections and these conditions and make a series of demands, as though either party in the transaction is the only one that exists there for that match. The reality is, in most circumstances, for every seller, there is a buyer, and often more than one. And for every home that you want to buy from a seller, there are often other buyers you're competing with. And as a seller, if you're selling to a buyer and that buyer doesn't buy, you do also run the risk of not having another buyer. So functionally, both parties in the transaction should try to take the mindset of, I'm selling myself to the other party. If you are selling your home to a buyer. And by that, you want to be like water. You want to just roll with the punches, just flow, easy peasy. Don't get stressed about too many things. Make the buyers feel welcome. And make your efforts towards the buyer to be welcoming. Make it easy for them to buy your house. And today I want to talk about the buyer side. And as a buyer in today's market, it's even more crucial, given the lack of houses to buy, that you also go with the flow. Prepare yourself in advance so that when you make an offer, you are ready to present yourself to the seller as the best option in the purchase of the house. You want to be the friendliest, the easiest to deal with, and the nicest and soundest transaction for a seller to choose you. So today I want to talk about some of the things you can do or that you should do in today's market as a buyer to prepare yourself so that you can be the buyer of choice in today's market. And by doing so, you put yourself in the driver's seat in a way that other buyers that may not prepare the way you do to buy that house that's your dream house. So let's talk about the things you need to do as a buyer. And I'm going to start with fundamentally, anytime I talk to a buyer, I always say there's 3 steps to the process. There's 3 steps to the process. Get your financial ducks in a row. Get your process, how you're going to buy a house, in a row. And if you're working with an agent, hire them. And then step 3 is look and buy. And I describe it to all buyers as those 3 steps as a series of steps. Imagine yourself on the first floor of a house and you're trying to get to the second floor. And on that second floor, fundamentally in the buying process, going up those steps, is the new house, is the dream house. And you may be Michael Jordan. But I don't care how high you jump, you can't start on the first floor and jump to the top, which is the completion of the transaction. You need to go step by step by step by step. And the more steps you think you're going to skip, the more often you're going to stumble and fall and end up back at the bottom. So, focus when you're buying on a house. That's the first steps. 1, get your financial ducks in a row. And what does that mean? Determine how you're going to buy. And sometimes you may want to sit down with an agent who can lay out all those options for you and talk to you. In fact, I recommend it. And talk to you about the different types of financing. And fundamentally, financing, in New York State, there's 4 different primary options. There's a few other alternatives, but 4 primary options: conventional loans, FHA loans, VA loans. In New York State offers what's called a Sonny Mae product. And then the 5th option is cash, if you have cash saved. So you want to start out by talking to an agent and then going to a preferred lender if you're going to borrow money. Figure out the mortgage program that is not only best for you, but also that may give you more options to purchase. And you might say, okay, what do I mean like that? Each different type of mortgages have different qualifying ratios, meaning they'll loan a certain amount of money based on your income. They have different credit score requirements. They have different down payment requirements. And they have different conditional requirements based on the appraisal of the house, meaning a bank inspector goes and looks at the house, not like a home inspector, but for value and to see that the house meets certain conditions. So if you were a buyer with very low money down, for example, and your credit score has got some bumps and bruises, you may be looking at a mortgage program like an FHA, which is a program that allows for low down payment, a little bit better qualifying ratios, but also when the appraiser goes and looks at the house, may come with the perception, not always factual, but the perception that the appraiser may be a little more picky on things like handrails, pressure relief valves, peeling paint, age of the roof, gutters and downspouts, and they might ask for the seller for repair. So when you're a buyer and you're talking to your lender about the different options for mortgage, what you want to talk to your lender about is first, A, what are the options for you? And B, are there options that are traditionally more attractive to the sellers in today's market? And as a seller, I'll tell you what, fundamentally they are looking for. The easiest process to get the financing in place. So the number one safest transaction for a seller is a cash offer. The number 2 is what they call a cash-like mortgage. There are mortgage products. Premium Mortgage here in Western New York offers one now, which is what they call a same as cash. So if you're a buyer and you have, I think it's a minimum of 20%, it may be 30% down, your credit score meets a certain threshold, which is usually A+, like above 780 or 800. You're willing to put 20% in escrow at the offering point. They will guarantee that the mortgage will close. In fact, they will buy the house if something goes wrong and you're unable to close it. And that's what's called the same as cash. There are strings attached. You have some money at risk as a buyer. If you aren't able to close it and then they close it cash, they own it, they'll resell it. And if there's some loss there, you may have to eat part of that or all of it. But it gives you in the same as cash position. So it goes cash, same as cash. And same as cash is a same as cash mortgage, a home equity on another house, a gift letter from parents, mom, dad, family member, direct family member that's documentable. Then there's conventional mortgage. Conventional mortgage is usually a minimum 5% down. The ratios are a little more difficult, but the appraisals have a tendency to be a little friendlier. And then there's the insured mortgages, Sonny Mae, FHA, and VA mortgages, which, as an agent, if you look at the list, cash-like, conventional, FHA, VA, Sonny Mae, those have a tendency to, get a little bit stickier with appraisal repairs. I've seen them all over the board, though, so I try not to draw that conclusion 100%. But if I was to grade them out, the most attractive offer to any seller is somebody that says, I have cash and documents it. The second most attractive offer is one that's saying, I'm the same as cash mortgage, or I'm getting the money from somebody else who's gifting it to me, private, individual, so I don't need to go through any hoops with the bank to get the approval. The third is one that's a pre-approved mortgage, and then those each have pros and cons based on the mortgage type. VA can be no money down. Very good mortgage program if you're a veteran. Sellers sometimes love to have VAs because they say, oh, that means I'm selling a house to a veteran and I'm great about it. Other sellers can have a little trepidation because it means there's low money down. Low money down means higher risk of the appraisal coming in low. And on VA and FHA, if the appraisal comes in low, the buyer, you sign an addendum that the buyer can cancel it at any time. So as a buyer, when you meet with the lender, you're going to want to ask them some questions. One, what can I get? What am I qualified for? What are the different mortgage programs I'm qualified for? And what are those that are most attractive to sellers? And what does it mean to me? So that when you get that pre-approval, you are in a position where if you're in a competitive situation, you can take the most streamlined, easiest mortgage product for the seller to present yourself with your best foot forward. And if you happen to be in a negotiation where they don't have an alternative, you can choose the one that's best for you. Remember, you have to, in step 1, we're getting you pre-approved so that in step 4 or 5, when you're making that offer, you can be the easiest and the most attractive presentation to the seller if it's competitive. You do not want to throw up additional roadblocks for that seller in a situation where an offer situation is competitive. If there's no competition, you can start to be more about you. When there's competition, you got to be more about them. So, step 1, get your financing in order, pick a mortgage product, get a pre-approval. And by get a pre-approval, I don't mean talk to somebody on the phone, don't let them run your credit score, don't provide them any income and debt. Get one of those letters that says, I'm a bank, I loan money, I don't know anything about the buyer, but I think I can get them qualified. That's not a pre-approval. I'm talking about you having your credit score run, your tax forms reviewed, your employment, not necessarily verified, but you have sent pay stubs in. If you have overtime, it's been reviewed to see that it's qualified as income to you, and you are approved. The only remaining conditions for after you buy that house are that the house's bank appraisal is going to be done and that you don't, through an act of God or something that's out of your control, lose your job or something. If you have a large down payment, have your proof of funds ready, provide it to your agent. The second step is after you've gotten that pre-approval, as I say, sit down and figure out what you're going to do with an agent. In today's world, since the NAR settlement in August of 2024, whenever you as a buyer want to go see a house, you fundamentally have 2 choices. One, you can go directly to the selling agent, an agent that does not represent you, and you can look at the house with them. In that circumstance, you don't need any agreement with them. You just need to be very clear. The agent needs to disclose to you they work for the seller, they do not work for you. Or the second alternative you have is every time you look at a house, you need some sort of buyer's agency agreement. What that agreement should do is should spell out what the agent's going to do for you and what their expectation is that they would get paid if you buy the house. Now, in today's market, you can do where you pay the agent, or you can have a scenario where you ask the seller to pay the agent as a part of the price. And then alternative 3 is you can ask the seller to pay the agent, and what the seller does not pay, you can make up the difference. So as a buyer, trying to be the most attractive offer to a seller, I think, it's my opinion, that you should hire an agent that knows what the heck they're doing. And by that, I mean somebody that has decent reviews, comes highly recommended, somebody that you trust, somebody that walks you through the process, somebody that communicates clearly with you and concisely with you, because they will also communicate clearly and concisely with the seller's agent. Somebody that is not temperamental, somebody that is available, somebody that picks up the phone, somebody that responds to your text. And let me tell you the advantage to that. When you are submitting an offer, let's say you've decided you're not going to go to listing agent, then listing agent, listing agent. The disadvantage to that is if you want to look at 8 listings, you might have to deal with 8 different agents. You're often best starting with an agent, getting your financial ducks in a row, sitting down with that agent, hiring that agent with a clear and concise buyer's agency agreement that says that agent is going to get X% when you buy a house, discussing with the agent how that works, and then going to look at houses. Now, if you pick an agent from the yellow pages, Bill, and you're talking to this Bill, and Bill often ghosts you for days, Bill doesn't return text, you leave a voicemail, you don't hear from Bill. And by the way, Bill is a made-up name, and I'm not saying agents named Bill are bad agents. It's just, let's say it's Jane or Karen or who cares? If they're not super responsive to you, chances are very good they're not going to be super responsive to the seller's agent. One of the things you want to have in an agent is one that if you interviewed 100 agents in the area and you said, hey, when an offer comes in and you see it from such and such, do you expect them to be responsive? Do they answer your questions? Do they respond to your text? Do they present organized, detailed, well-written contracts? Do they follow up on problems to solve them? Because what you want as a buyer is you want an agent on your side that is also trusted on the other side of the real estate transaction. So that when you have your pre-approval, you see the house and you've hired an agent, you've agreed to the pricing on what that agent's going to get paid, you submit an offer through your agent that's going to go to the listing agent. You want to have an agent that when the listing agent has a question, responds to them. You want to have an agent that does not allow things to get personal. You want to have an agent that when the seller and the listing agent are being demanding, calls you up and says, here's what we've got. What do you want to do? Let's give them a quick response, and flows like water or the wind. Nice and easy breezy. No pressure. You want to be attractive to the seller. And I don't know about you, but I know I am much easier to sell things to when I feel the salesperson is kind of working with me and not working against me. So when you hire a buyer's agent, their job is to represent your best interest. And often they can get the most with a little bit of sugar or a little bit of honey is the old term, right? You can typically get the most from the other side by being suggestive, not argumentative. So when I say there's 3 steps, 1, financing, 2, pick an agent and discover the process. I always say you've started the step 1. Now you've got kind of your financial stuff started. Step 2 is you've completed your financing. Step 3 is you're back with your agent again, talking about the process of buying and selling. How much do they charge? Why do they charge it? What did they do? How did they follow up? How do they carry you through all the steps in that transaction and sign a contract with that agent? Commit to them, they will commit to you. And that action in and of itself will prepare you to deal with a seller and to be more attractive to that seller because everything you do is clear and complete. Step number 3. You're going to look at houses and then you're going to pick one. And when you pick one that you like, don't pick two, don't pick three, pick one you like. Focus on that one and then deal with the agent you trust and figure out, how am I going to win that one at a price that I consider fair to me or that I'm willing to do? Now, once you pick that house, we've got to get you into winning mode. And winning mode is all about presenting a clear, concise offer to the seller that is clean, limited conditions, flexible closing, strongest financing, friendliest presentation, so you can't lose. The only reason you lose is because it's up to you. And what ultimately you want to have happen in your real estate transaction is you want control. You want to be able to say no when you don't want to act on something. And you also want to, this is very important, when you choose an agent, by the way, you should never feel as though the agent is not happy with you because you don't decide to take action in a house. Unless you're chronic. And then that agent should feel comfortable having a heart-to-heart with you, saying, you've looked at 22 different houses, you're not making an offer on any of them, your expectations are too high for what you're going to get. I think we need to adjust your expectations, or maybe we need to look at a different area where you can get what you want at the price range you're hoping in. Or unless you're what I call a chronic stealer, which is somebody that sees a house hit the market at 300, you're not adjusting to the market and you offer 250 and you lose. You see the next one hit the market at 400, you offer 300 and you lose. You see another one hit the market at 380, you offer 350 and you lose. Without any context as whether or not those are good values or bad values. You just won't pay list price. So you're constantly offering low because an agent can list a house well lower than what it's worth. You need to be completely flexible, completely able to accept what the market is bringing, and completely willing to pay market value for a property in order to win. So when you do decide to make an offer, make your offer clean. If you want to have inspections or contingencies or strings in that offer, options as I call them. Here's an offer. I have an option to inspect it and object to the house. I have an option to verify this is, done correctly. I have an option to do a septic test later on myself, or I have, these ways out of the contract, contingencies. The sellers will look at that as though you're not actually selling, you're not actually buying their house. You're maybe buying their house if they meet certain hurdles. And you can get away with that in a market where you're the seller's only buyer. If you are not the seller's only buyer, though, you need to eliminate those conditions and contingencies. So when you make an offer, there's 6 fundamental important things. There's the price, there's the deposit, there's what you're including, how you're getting financing, when you want to close, and any inspection contingencies. So what you want to do is, if you're thinking about doing an inspection, try to do a pre-inspection, get that out of the way. So there's no inspection contingencies. On your financing, try to make it as limited risk as possible. Let's say you want to go with an FHA mortgage and the seller might be worried about some repairs. Offer as a condition, if you have the money to do it, that up to so many dollars in repairs you'll make. If the house appraises less by $5,000 or $10,000, you're willing to make up the difference. If you will is the way you want to look at it. So that when the seller says, I like that offer, but what if it doesn't? You already have an answer in the presentation. If it doesn't appraise, I'll help solve it. If the bank wants the peeling paint on the front window to be taken care of, I'll be responsible for it. If the lender requires handrails in the garage, I'll be responsible for it. Those are all, with you and a decent agent and a decent lender, those are all fairly predictable, by the way. Lenders, appraisers are looking at certain standards, and I can tell you there are always things like handrails, steps not being the right height, no handrails around decks, no handrails on second floor patios, peeling paint, press release valves on hot water tanks I've seen, handrails on staircases where people could fall. All those are predictable. So as a buyer, you want to be answering those questions for the seller when you submit the offer. So you make your offer clean. Be flexible with what the seller's needs are on closing dates. So now you've started your process, you've gotten financing, you've picked an agent, you've hired a good one, you've gotten all your ducks in a row to eliminate as many conditions as possible. You're out looking at a house, you see one you want, there's 5 other offers. You discuss with your agent what you're going to do. Their compensation is in the contract, in the offer, already solved for the seller. Either you're paying enough price to make sure that the seller will pay your agent, or you are paying their agent directly. Easy peasy, simple. You're offering an offer with very few contingencies. Now you're at step 8. Now you're almost to the top of the stairs. Now all we need to do is, after you've got the house and you've won, we need to continue that process all the way through the closing. We need to, again, be persuasive, not argumentative with the seller. So after you get the contract of sale, you're going to get an attorney, which your agent should help you find a good real estate attorney and recommend one. If you hire a good agent, take their recommendations, because it means each step they're more formally involved with helping you get up. If you liken it to a handrail, which can often be appraisal issues, your agent is a handrail that you can hold on to when you take each step. That way, if you slip, you're not falling all the way to the bottom again. So if you're at step 9 and there does become a problem with a question in the appraisal, or a question in the financing, or a well or septic test that's failed that needs to be resolved, or something comes up in title, search, survey, anything, you have a handrail. That's your agent. It's your guiding light to get to the top of the stairs. So during that closing process, things will happen to you as a buyer. I always say, after you buy a house, be prepared for buyer's remorse feelings. Be prepared with, oh my gosh, what have I done? Can I afford it? Are these repairs going to be too much for me? Is this house too big, too small? Maybe I won't like the location. Be prepared to hear things. I always say there's some guy at every bar that knows everything about real estate that is always willing to drag you down. Don't listen to those voices. Don't listen to those voices. You made the right decision because you've been in the market, you've been looking. You made the right decision because you're working with a professional agent. You've discussed your options and opinions. You've been communicated to clearly. You made an offer and competed with the best to win. And now you've got the house and you're going through the closing process. So the closing process, agent's going to recommend an attorney. Use that attorney. Have that attorney review the contract with you. If there are any inspections, get them done completely, quickly, and be prepared for things to be wrong. There are things wrong with every single house. I lived in my house. I bought my latest house for 18 months, and I am changing over time everything, even things that aren't wrong. Even things that aren't wrong, I'm just making it my own. We're doing a bathroom. There's nothing wrong with the first floor bathroom. It just wasn't 2025. So we're changing it now. But that's all been in part of a plan and a budget, and you kind of walk along. So when you're buying the house, the initial feeling is going to be, oh my gosh, I'm buying this house. Can I do this? You can do it. You don't need to do everything at once. Just one step, one step, one step. So if you see 8 things to be done and you feel overwhelmed, just take the first step, hold on to the handrail, let that agent be your handrail, then take the second, and before long, you're going to turn around and you're going to be at the top of the stairs. You're going to look. You're going to be in your new house. You're going to look down at the end, and it's going to be fine. So during the closing process, get an attorney, complete any inspections quickly. Try not to object to what I call nitpicking inspection things. Every inspection has fundamentally similar things that are wrong, that are just fundamental wrong with every house. You know, there's an electrical outlet over in the corner that's got reverse polarity. There's one of the sinks has a outlet that should have a GFI on it. Maybe the GFI is on the circuit board. Maybe the inspector didn't see it. Maybe it doesn't have one. It needs to be added. the main electrical cable coming into the sub panel or the panel doesn't have a drip loop on it. It's a little old, maybe a little frayed, could be resealed, or could have a new cable put on it at some point. There's always some paint somewhere that's got a little chip in it or a little bit of peeling. There's always a brick somewhere that could be remortared or retouched up. There's always something in the underlayment somewhere in the attic that is discolored, could be mold. All those things. I'm not saying don't check them out, but I'm saying when you get an inspection completed and you get that report, for example, if you succeed in having an inspection, or you do a pre-inspection, look at it in the context of what you're buying. If you're buying a house for $480,000, is it really negative that the house is going to need you to put $400 to $6,500 into it with a little bit of have mold remediation in a small area of the attic and have an electrician come in and fix 3 or 4 things? Or, replace a window or fix a cracked pane of glass or put a pressure relief valve on the hot water tank. You're spending $380,000 or $200,000 or $400,000 or $500,000, sometimes $1 million, right? These are not traditional. This is not a be all and end all, right? So try to be, hey, I'm okay with that. You then apply for your mortgage and deliver the deposit to your, whatever the deposit's going to be. Another way to create a strong offer, put the hammer down on the deposit. Quit being cheap with your deposit. It's going to be part of your down payment anyways. It's getting credited off your closing cost. If you are a cash buyer on a I just had one last week. I had a cash buyer on a $215,000 thing, and they brought in $5,000 deposit, and it made me scratch my head. Your cash. Flash it a little, right? Put 10, 15 down, 20 down. You don't have to put 100 down. Just don't be, here's my $100 check, but I'm a cash buyer. Yeah. You're making that an interest. A month. $200,000, 3%. You're making $500 a month in interest. Put $5,000, $10,000 down, buyer. Be more upfront, dedicated to buying the house. Prove to the sellers you want it, right? Earnest money goes down. You apply for your mortgage. You do everything that the bank asked you to do right away. Consider it a race. The quicker you get your mortgage approved, the quicker everybody can go and relax about the closing. Then your attorneys can worry about the title search, the survey. At least in Erie County here, this is an attorney closing area. The title search, the survey, updating any county health department certifications of septic and or well, anything that needs to be done that's a condition of the contract. And then it gets to the closing where your agent will take you to a walkthrough and then the closing. So I guess in this whole thing, I just want you to be aware as a buyer, it's best to put your ducks in a row before you start to buy. Be a prepared and ready buyer with an attractive mortgage program or a pre-approval for the best you can do and have the options available to you. If you're low money down buyer and the only option is UFHA, that's the best you can do. Find an agent that will work with you as an FHA buyer, will give you good guidance and show you FHA eligible houses and compete for them, right? Find out from an agent, any agent, interview them. What do they do? How do they search for you? How often can you text them? When can you communicate with them? How often would they like to show you houses? Are they going to hunt and peck or show you a group at a time? What do they do for you when it's time to make an offer? What questions are they going to answer? Are they going to respond to your text at 8 and 9 o'clock at night? Hire somebody good, because all of these items will be more attractive to the seller and the seller's agent. You will not be Michael Jordan trying to jump to step number 10 and skipping a bunch of steps that the seller's agent's going to say, "What? Wait, what?" I had somebody a couple months ago, to give you another tale, somebody demanded that they were going to be making an offer with some agent from Arizona. And this is New York State. And I said, okay. And they clearly had no idea what they were going to do. And they were making a whole series of demands, and they were not in any order, rhyme, or reason. they were completely on step 9. Like they thought, I'm just buying the house and paying $320. Well, how are you getting the money? Who's representing you? How are you doing the contracts? How are those contracts going to be presented to the seller's agent? What are you going to put down for a deposit? Are you doing any inspections? What appliances do you expect? When do you want to close? Maintain flexibility for a close date for a seller if they need it. And who's helping you all the way through? In that circumstance, I was like, how is this other agent going to help? They're not even in the area. Who's showing the house? Who's doing the inspection walkthrough with them? Who's doing the final walkthrough? Where is their money? They just wanted commission off, and they wanted the listing agent, which in that circumstance was me, to do everything. It just wasn't a good way to win friends and influence people. Better way to do it. They lost anyways because their offer was a complete mess. I helped as much as I could because I am representing the seller. I want it to be in order for the seller. I want the seller to have a clean transaction. But sometimes people listen to advice from people that, out there in outer space, man. And you can do everything in your power as a listing agent to drag them to the finish line so they can win. And they become argumentative, not cooperative. This is not a transaction that should be full of conflict. There's inherently a tug of war, okay? Inherently, you want to win something, they want to win something. It's going to go back and forth. But it doesn't mean while you're pulling the rope, you got to be shooting each other. Nudge them a little, like fishing, right? You're not going to yank very hard and get a reception that's acceptable. You need to let them nibble a little at it and then set the hook. And that's the greatest way to get your victory in negotiation as a buyer. So hopefully this is helpful. Best recommendation I can make to you is meet with a good, strong professional agent, get yourself financially ducks in a row. And then when you're looking at buying, try to make it as easy with limited conditions as possible for the seller when you're in a competitive mode in order to win. Thanks for listening again this month. As always, I'll be back next month with You Own It with Jerry Thompson. Thank you so much for tuning in to You Own It. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcast apps, and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and greatest. All of our social channels are clickable in the show notes as well. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, c21jerry.com. There you'll find more info on me as well as my latest listings for all of Western New York. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, through any big decision, you own it.